Hi everybody. So this is the first model that I'm going to have a look at today. It's for the City Yoga. So right off the bat, before I even get into the model, I wanted to mention that what I felt when reading this model, which I'll explain in a second, it felt like it was item by item describing just the blocks of text on the screen, but there was more potential to look beyond this one URL and think about what other content on the site had a similar structure and had a similar logic to it. I'll give you an example. What we're describing here is a yoga teacher training course. Or stepping up yoga practice. So it's describing a course particularly for higher level students to increase their skills. And it's under this yoga teacher training heading, and there's contents, prerequisites, the team that teaches the course, dates and time information. A lot of that kind of stuff, and including this stuff you'd have on this single URL, a lot of that is also going to apply to workshops or other things offered by this same same organization. So rather than just describing exactly this one page, whenever you're looking at a model, you're not looking at modeling something that's going to be useful for you to describe several kinds of things across your site. So when we looked at the Apple example, for example, all the different products followed very similar structures, and they had the same reusable building blocks. They didn't necessarily use all of the same building blocks, but they were obviously pulling from the same box of different content types. In this case, we've got, for example, the team. Sorry, the load's a little bit slow on this machine. And this is the team that teaches this particular course. We've got Maria, for example, over here, and if we go over on the team section, we get Maria again, and her information is presented here, but slightly differently. So why not describe Maria once and use the same content in both? Maybe you could have some particular bits of a person description that were relevant when they're being described generally, or when they're a yoga instructor, or when they're teaching other yoga instructors. That's the kind of thing we could use, we could adapt. But it's one person, we could describe them once, and then just share the information from this page to the page we're looking at. That's the kind of thing it would be very useful to always be thinking about in the back of your mind when you're modeling your content. So if we come to the first example, right at the root, we've got City Yoga. So that is a very, very specific name, and from what I've seen on the site, that's probably only going to be useful to describe this one page. If not City Yoga, then Yoga Teacher Training Description. Those seem very, very, very specific. So you wouldn't be able to use this model somewhere else because you have made it so specific. So the question would be, can we have a more general description for one of our offerings called a session description or a workshop description? And then this is just a particular type of workshop description. So that kind of reuse of your model is something to keep in mind. So these two first tags, although they're quite specific, and specific is good, they're potentially too specific. You could just call it a session description, and then title, hours, and a lot of the other structure would be fine. So as I went on into the model, we have the City Yoga, the yoga training description. That's kind of the overall container for everything we're looking at, from my understanding. And then we've got a title. And then training hours. Training hours, I couldn't find them on this actual page. So either they are being modeled from the dates and times, or they're just being considered internal metadata, which is not being shown necessarily, but is part of this module. Either way is fine. That's okay. It's when we get into the subtitles and descriptions, here is where you could be a bit more specific. From my reading of this model, we've got description here, 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 and here. So what I think this is 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks on the page. Let me clear this out so it's a little bit easier to read. So we've got description block, description block, description block. Actually, that's this one actually, and then this fourth one is down here. So these are very different types of content. We can even see here we've talked about prerequisites over here. So these and team, these are things you need to do before, people that are teaching it, and this is people that it's for. So for any course that or workshop or treatment, you might have this target group. You could have who it's for as a very useful, reusable thing to have. And that's the kind of thing, if you were describing several courses and you had several authors, you would say when you're describing a session, you want to describe the session and then you want to describe who that session is for. So if you just say description, then we haven't given enough guidance and we won't get the consistency in the content that we want. So for these description blocks, I would give them more specific names so that we could have our first one maybe called description, but then have the next one for target group actually be called target group. So rather than allowing them to make up whatever title they want, make it target group, and then it's always going to be target group, or whatever the equivalent is in German, so that the authors know when you're writing a description, when you're writing a course description, you start with the overall description, then you describe who it's for, and that's a different thing. Then you get into where it is, what location, and then what you do, or what the completion of the course will be. So in this case, graduation, after the audit, you get a teaching diploma, etc. That is not going to apply to other courses. So that might be an optional thing. So whether there's any diplomas or certifications, that could be an element at the bottom for diplomas and certifications, and it would only be for certain types of courses, and it wouldn't be a mandatory element. So right here you've got most things mandatory. If you gave them more specific names, you could have less mandatory things, but a more general model. So we're going to describe workshops and other sessions that we offer using the same model, but some things like do you graduate? You don't graduate from a regular yoga course or a workshop necessarily. So things like that for post-workshop items, those could be optional. But then we'd have one model and we would more consistently present our information.